The amber dawn of Kepler 442c painted the crystalline landscape in shades of honey and gold. But Marcus Webb barely noticed anymore. 12 years of solitude had dulled his appreciation for beauty, turning even the most spectacular sunrise into mere background noise for another day of routine maintenance and careful survival. At 48, Marcus moved through his compound with the practiced efficiency of a man who had long ago streamlined his existence down to its bare essentials. The terraforming station he'd converted into his home stretched across 3 interconnected domes, each serving a specific purpose: living quarters, hydroponics, and workshop. It was more space than one person needed, but it had been designed for a team of 20 researchers. Now it echoed with the hollow sound of footsteps that belonged to only one man. His morning ritual never varied. Check the atmospheric processors. Test the water recyclers. Monitor the solar collectors. Tend the hydroponic gardens that kept him fed. Each task performed with methodical precision, each day bleeding into the next in an endless cycle of purposeful isolation. Marcus paused at the observation window of Dome 2, coffee mug warming his weathered hands. The landscape before him was alien yet familiar fields of crystal formations that chimed softly in the wind, interspersed with groves of luminescent trees that pulsed with their own internal light. Beautiful, certainly, but beauty felt hollow when there was no one to share it with. He touched the old scar that ran along his left temple, a reminder of the accident that had taken his team and stranded him here. The supply ship that should have evacuated them had never come. By the time he'd managed to send a distress signal through the damaged communications array, Earth had written off their mission as a total loss. Dead. All of them presumed dead. Marcus had let them believe it. What was the point of rescue when everyone he'd cared about was gone? The guilt and grief had driven him to choose isolation over the painful process of returning to a life that would never be the same. Here, on this remote moon, he could exist without the constant reminders of his failure to protect his people. The proximity alarm shattered his morning contemplation like glass. Marcus froze, coffee mug suspended halfway to his lips. In 12 years, that alarm had never sounded. Not once. The nearest inhabited system was 3 weeks' travel away, and this moon had been deliberately chosen for its isolation and apparent lack of intelligent life. Computer, display perimeter sensors. He commanded, his voice rough from hours of silence. The wall screen flickered to life, cycling through various external cameras. For a moment, Marcus saw only the usual landscape crystal formations, luminescent trees, the distant mountains that bordered his valley. Then the camera focused on Sector 7, and his breath caught. A ship lay crumpled against a grove of crystal. Trees its hull breached and smoking. The design was unfamiliar sleek curves where human vessels favored sharp angles, constructed from some kind of biometallic compound that seemed to shift color in the morning light. It was clearly alien, but not from any species in the galactic database. Movement near the wreckage caught his attention. Figures emerged from behind the crystal formations, moving slowly toward his compound. Marcus enhanced the image, and his heart rate spiked. 11 beings, definitely humanoid, but unmistakably alien. Even from this distance, he could see their ethereal beauty, tall, slender figures with skin that seemed to glow with an inner light, hair like spun starlight flowing behind them as they walked. They wore what appeared to be military uniforms, though the design was unlike anything he'd encountered. They were heading directly toward his front entrance. Marcus set down his mug with trembling hands and reached for the pulse rifle mounted beside the communications console. His military training from decades past kicked in, muscle memory guiding his movements as he checked the weapon's charge. Part of him, the engineer, the scientist, was fascinated by this first contact with a new species. But the survivor in him, the man who had learned the hard way that the universe was full of dangers, demanded caution. He activated the external communications array and watched as the group approached his main gate. Up close, they were even more striking. Their skin held an opalescent quality, shifting between pale blue and silver, depending on how the light caught it. Intricate patterns covered their faces and hands, not tattoos, but something that seemed to be part of their natural biology, pulsing gently with each heartbeat. The one leading the group stepped forward, and Marcus felt an odd jolt of recognition. She was tall, even for her species, with an elegant bearing that spoke of command and responsibility. Her hair fell in waves of pure white to her shoulders, and when she looked directly at the camera, her eyes were the deep blue-green of Earth's forgotten oceans. "Human of this place," she called out, her voice carrying clearly through the communication system. Her accent was musical, each word carefully pronounced. "We mean no harm. Our vessel has failed, and we seek only temporary shelter while we attempt repairs." Marcus studied their faces through the camera. Exhaustion was written in every line of their postures, and several bore obvious injuries, burns from their crash, cuts from the crystal formations. Whatever threat they might pose, they were clearly in desperate need of help. "Who are you?" he demanded, finger hovering over the gate controls. "What species? What were you doing in this system?" The leader placed one hand against the gate, her palm flat against the reinforced metal. "I am Naya of the Zephyrian Coalition. These are my sisters not by blood, but by bond and purpose. We fled our homeworld when it fell to the hegemony. Our ship was damaged in the escape. Zephyrians." Marcus searched his memory, but came up empty. Not in any of the galactic databases he had access to. Either they were from beyond explored space, or their species was so new to galactic politics that they hadn't made it into the records yet. "Why here?" he asked. "This moon is uncharted, unlisted. How did you even know it existed?" Naya's companions looked to her with expressions of hope and trust that spoke of deep bonds forged through shared hardship. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note of something that sounded almost like wonder. "I have seen you in the dream walk, human Marcus Webb. For 7 moon cycles, your face has come to me in sleep. I saw this place, these crystal formations, your dwelling of metal and glass. I saw a man who carries great sadness, but possesses a kind heart." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. She knew his name. Somehow, impossibly, this alien woman knew who he was. "That's not possible," he whispered, but even as he spoke, fragments of his own dreams over the past months came rushing back. Dreams of silver-skinned figures calling his name. Dreams of eyes like ocean depths looking at him with desperate hope. Dreams he'd dismissed as products of isolation and loneliness. "The dream walk does not lie," Naya said gently. "It showed me that when all others would turn away, you would shelter those in need. It showed me a man who understands loss and would not wish it upon others." One of her companions swayed on her feet, and Marcus could see the burns on her arms more clearly now. Whatever these Zephyrians were, whatever had brought them to his doorstep, they were hurt and desperate. And if his dreams had been connected to theirs somehow against every instinct screamed caution. Marcus found his hand moving to the gate release. "Once you're inside, you follow my rules," he said, his voice gruff with emotion he couldn't quite identify. "No weapons, no interfering with my systems without permission. You rest, you heal, and then we figure out how to get you on your way." "Understood," Naya said, and he could hear the relief in her voice. "We are grateful beyond words, Marcus Webb." The gate slid open with a mechanical groan, and the 11 Zephyrian women entered his compound. As they passed through the entrance, Marcus got his first close look at them. They were even more striking in person. Their opalescent skin seemed to generate its own soft light, and the patterns he'd noticed were intricate beyond anything human art had achieved. Each woman was unique, yet they moved with a harmony that suggested deep emotional connections. As the gate sealed behind them, Marcus realized his hands were shaking slightly. 12 years of solitude, broken in an instant. His carefully ordered existence had just become infinitely more complicated. Naya approached him as her companions looked around the entrance chamber with curiosity and wonder. Up close, she was breathtaking in a way that had nothing to do with her alien beauty. There was strength in her bearing, intelligence in her eyes, and something else, a warmth that seemed to reach directly into the cold places of his heart that he'd thought were dead forever. "Thank you," she said simply, and when she smiled, Marcus felt something shift inside his chest. Something that had been frozen for 12 long years began, impossibly, to thaw. "Don't thank me yet," he replied, but his voice lacked its usual edge. "Let's get you all cleaned up and fed first. Then we'll figure out what comes next." As he led the group deeper into his compound, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't begin to understand. The dreams, Naya's impossible knowledge of his name, the way her presence seemed to fill spaces in his soul he'd forgotten existed. It all pointed to something far more complex than a simple rescue situation. For the first time in 12 years, Marcus Webb was no longer alone. And despite every rational thought telling him to be cautious, to maintain his distance, part of him was grateful beyond measure. The universe, it seemed, wasn't quite finished with him after all. 3 days had passed since the Zephyrian women arrived, and Naya felt the walls of Marcus's compound both protecting and confining her in equal measure. She stood in the hydroponics dome, watching Jade and Mira work alongside their reluctant host, their voices a soft murmur as they discussed nutrient solutions and growth cycles. The sight filled her with warmth, her sisters adapting, learning, finding purpose even in their displacement. But it was Marcus himself who occupied most of her thoughts. The dreams that had guided her here continued each night, growing stronger and more vivid. In sleep, she walked beside him through landscapes that blended Zephyr's silver forests with Earth's forgotten meadows. In dreams, they spoke without words, understanding flowing between them like water finding its natural course. Yet in waking hours, he maintained a careful distance that both frustrated and intrigued her. "You're thinking of him again," Senna's voice carried a note of gentle amusement as the healer approached, her medical kit slung over one shoulder. Naya didn't deny it. Among Zephyrians, emotional bonds were considered sacred, nothing to be hidden or ashamed of. The dream walk showed me his face for months before we found him, but it did not show me his heart would be so carefully guarded. Senna settled beside her on a storage crate, her wise eyes studying Marcus as he demonstrated proper pH testing to an eager Jade. "Human hearts are different from ours, sister. Where we feel openly, they have learned to armor themselves against pain. Look at how he moves, every gesture controlled, every word measured. He has suffered greatly." Through the transparent walls of the dome, Naya could see the other women going about their morning tasks. Vera tended the luminescent plants they'd brought from their ship, coaxing them to grow in this alien soil. Luna worked in the workshop, her mechanical aptitude earning Marcus's grudging respect. Young Zara practiced her language lessons with Cora, their laughter echoing through the compound. They were building something here, Naya realized. Not just shelter, but the beginnings of a new kind of home. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. "The others look to you for leadership," Senna continued softly. "But who do you look to? Who carries your burdens when the weight becomes too much?" Before Naya could answer, Marcus approached their corner of the dome. His weathered face showed the strain of the past few days, hosting 11 unexpected guests. Had clearly pushed him beyond his comfort zone, yet he'd risen to the challenge with quiet determination. Senna, Jade wants to show you something she discovered about the protein synthesizers, he said, his voice carrying that formal politeness he used as a shield. Apparently, your people's biology is compatible with some modifications she's been working on. As Senna departed, Marcus turned his attention to the pH testing kit, busying himself with unnecessary adjustments. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and careful distance. You are afraid of me, Naya said quietly. Not as an accusation, but as an observation. Marcus's hands stilled on the equipment. I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of this. He gestured vaguely between them. Whatever this is. I'm not good with people anymore, Naya. I haven't been for a long time. Yet you opened your gates to us. You shared your food, your shelter, your knowledge. She moved closer, noting how his breathing changed when she entered his personal space. The dream walk does not lie. Marcus Webb, it showed me your kindness because kindness is who you are, even when you try to hide it. He looked up then, and for a moment, the careful walls he'd built around himself seemed to waver. His eyes were brown like earth's soil, and in them she saw depths of pain that echoed her own losses. Your dream walk. Tell me about it. I need to understand. Naya felt her heart quicken. It was the first time he'd asked about her abilities directly, the first crack in his scientific skepticism. Among my people, some are born with the gift of far-seeing. We can touch other minds across great distances, especially during sleep, when the barriers between souls are thinnest. Usually, it shows us glimpses of possible futures, echoes of the past. But with you, she paused, searching for words to explain the unexplainable. With you, it feels like recognition, as if our souls knew each other before our minds ever met. Marcus absorbed this information with the careful attention he gave to technical problems. These dreams of yours started 7 months ago? 7. Moon cycles, yes. That's when mine started too. The admission seemed to surprise him as much as her. Dreams of silver-skinned people calling my name. Dreams of eyes like yours looking at me with desperate hope. I thought it was just isolation playing tricks on my mind. The revelation sent a thrill through Naya's entire being. The connection wasn't one-sided somehow, across the vast emptiness of space. Their minds had found each other. The dream walk has never worked both ways before. Not for me. Not for any Zephyrian I've known. You are ... unique, Marcus Webb. I'm really not, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm just a failed engineer hiding from his past. You saved 23 terraforming stations before the accident claimed your team, Naya said softly, watching his eyes widen in surprise. The dream walk showed me fragments of your memories. You have spent your life creating worlds where life could flourish. That is not failure. That is the work of creation itself. Marcus stepped back as if she'd struck him. You don't understand. They died because of my decisions. My pride. My certainty that I could handle anything. His voice cracked slightly. I was team leader. Their safety was my responsibility. And now you punish yourself with isolation, believing that if you never again care for anyone, you can never again fail them. Naya's voice carried no judgment, only understanding. But Marcus, avoiding connection doesn't heal the heart. It only preserves the wound. Before he could respond, Luna's voice crackled through the comm system. Marcus, Naya, you need to see this. I've got the ship's communication array partially online, and the signals I'm picking up ... they're not good. They hurried to the workshop, where Luna had jury-rigged a connection between the crashed Zephyrian vessel's electronics and Marcus's communication equipment. The young mechanic's face was grim as she pointed to the display showing various signal patterns. There are at least 3 hegemony search vessels in this system, Luna reported. They're doing a grid pattern sweep, moving steadily toward this moon. At their current speed, they'll reach orbit in approximately 4 days. The news hit the group like a physical blow. Naya felt her sister's fear through their emotional bonds. The careful peace they'd built in these few days, suddenly fragile as spun glass. "Can we repair your ship in time?" Marcus asked, immediately. Shifting into problem-solving mode, Luna shook her head. "The quantum drive is completely destroyed. Even if we had replacement parts, which we don't, it would take weeks to rebuild." "Then we need to hide the ship," Naya said. "Make it look like we never survived the crash." "Already thought of that," Marcus replied, his mind clearly racing through possibilities. "There's a ravine about 2 kilometers north. If we can move the wreckage there and trigger a controlled avalanche, it might buy us time." Mira, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "And what of us? 11 Zephyrian women cannot simply vanish into crystal formations." Marcus looked around the group, his gaze lingering on each face before settling on Naya. Something had changed in his expression. The careful distance was still there, but underneath it, she glimpsed steel resolve. "Then you don't vanish," he said quietly. "You stay. This compound has hidden chambers beneath the main structure, designed to protect against the worst storms. The atmospheric processors can be modified to mask thermal signatures. If we're clever about it, anyone scanning from orbit will detect only one human life sign. You would risk your safety for ours?" Senna asked, her healer's intuition clearly picking up on the deeper currents flowing through the conversation. Marcus met Naya's eyes across the crowded workshop. In his gaze, she saw the moment of decision, the instant when his carefully guarded heart cracked open just enough to let in the possibility of connection once more. "3 days ago, I thought my life was over," he said simply, "that I was just marking time until death claimed me. But watching you all work together, seeing the way you care for each other, the hope you carry even after losing everything, ... He paused, his voice growing stronger. "You've reminded me that life isn't just about surviving. It's about protecting the things that make survival worthwhile." Naya felt tears gather in her eyes, not just her own, but the emotional overflow from her sisters as they realized the depth of Marcus's commitment. He was choosing them, choosing to risk everything he'd built in his careful isolation to protect 11 strangers who'd crashed into his world. "The dream walk showed me your kindness," she said softly, "but it did not show me your courage." "You? Honor us, Marcus Webb." As the group dispersed to begin preparations for the approaching threat, Naya found herself walking beside Marcus toward the hidden chambers he'd mentioned. Their shoulders brushed as they walked, and neither pulled away. "Why?" she asked. "Why risk everything for us?" Marcus was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, just as they reached the concealed entrance to the underground levels, he stopped and turned to face her. "Because for the first time in 12 years, when I look at you, I don't see my failures," he said quietly. "I see possibility, and maybe that's worth fighting for." In that moment, standing in the artificial light of his compound with the threat of discovery looming over them, Naya felt the dream walk stir within her consciousness. But this time, instead of showing her the future, it revealed the present with perfect clarity. 2 souls recognizing each other across the vast differences of species and circumstance, finding in their connection something worth protecting. The universe had brought them together through dreams and desperation. Now they would discover what they could build together in the waking world. Vera had always been able to read her sister's heart like words written in starlight. But watching Naya pace the underground chamber for the 3rd time in 10 minutes made even her patient nature stretch thin. The hidden levels beneath Marcus's compound were larger than expected, a network of interconnected rooms that spoke of careful planning and perhaps deeper loneliness than any of them had imagined. "Sister, you're wearing a path in the metal flooring," Vera observed gently, looking up from the bioluminescent seedlings she was tending. The plants provided both light and air purification for their concealed refuge, their soft blue glow casting dancing shadows on the walls dot above them. The storm that had been building for 2 days finally unleashed its fury. Marcus had explained that Kepler 442c experienced these tempests, seasonally crystalline particles carried on winds that could strip flesh from bone, forcing even the hardiest native creatures to seek shelter. For the hidden refugees, it provided perfect cover from the hegemony search vessels still prowling the system. "I can hear his thoughts more clearly now," Naya said, pausing near the air recycling unit. "The storm somehow amplifies our connection. He's directly above us, alone in his workshop, and his mind is ... She pressed her palm against her temple. "He's in pain, Vera. Old pain that cuts deeper than any physical wound." Vera set down her nurturing tools and rose gracefully, moving to her sister's side. At 127 years old, barely into adulthood by Zephyrian standards, she possessed the kind of intuitive wisdom that came from growing up in Naya's protective shadow. Where her older sister carried the weight of leadership, Vera had learned to carry the weight of emotional truth. "And you want to go to him," she said, not making it a question. "I want to heal him," Naya corrected, then caught herself. "No, that's not right either. I want to understand him, to share his burden the way he's chosen to share ours." Around the chamber, their sisters had settled into the routines that kept them sane during confinement. Luna worked on a communication device that might eventually reach other Zephyrian refugees. Senna led a meditation circle that helped maintain their emotional bonds despite the stress. Young Zara practiced her language lessons with Cora, while Jade and Mira collaborated on adapting their biotechnology to human systems. But it was Raven who spoke the truth they were all thinking. "He's changing you, sister," the warrior said from her position near the concealed entrance, where she monitored the upper levels. "3 weeks ago, you were focused entirely on our survival, on finding a safe haven for our people. Now half your thoughts circle around one human male." Vera saw the flash of defensiveness in Naya's eyes and quickly intervened. "Change isn't always loss, Raven. Sometimes it's growth." "Growth?" Raven's laugh held an edge of bitterness. "We've lost everything: our homeworld, our culture, our future. The last thing our leader needs is to lose her heart to an alien who may or may not survive whatever's coming for us." The harsh words hit their target, and Vera watched her sister's opalescent skin dim slightly, a sign of deep emotional distress among their people. But before she could offer comfort, Nova's voice crackled through the small communication device. Luna had jerry-rigged. "Vera, Naya Marcus is requesting you both upstairs. He says he's found something we need to see." The storm's intensity had decreased enough to make movement between levels possible, though the wind still howled through the compound's superstructure like a living thing. They found Marcus in his main workshop, bent over a data terminal with an expression of grim concentration. His hair was disheveled, his clothes showing signs of sleepless work, and when he looked up at their approach, Vera could see the exhaustion etched in every line of his face. But more than that, she could see something she recognized from her own people's bonding ceremonies, the look of someone whose emotional barriers were finally irreversibly crumbling. "Show them," he said to Luna, who was stationed at a secondary console. The younger Zephyrian activated holographic display that made both sisters gasp. It showed a 3-dimensional map of the local stellar region, with various signals and trajectories marked in different colors. But it was the cluster of red indicators moving steadily toward their moon that captured their attention. 7 ships now, Luna reported. The storm delayed them, but they'll achieve orbital insertion within 18 hours. And Marcus discovered something else. Tell them about the signatures. Marcus rubbed his eyes before speaking. I've been analyzing the scanner data from your crashed ship. The quantum signatures of the vessels pursuing you. They match technology I've seen before. During the Centauri conflict, Earth forces encountered similar ships. The pilots were human. The revelation struck like lightning. Human? Naya breathed. Mercenaries, most likely. The hegemony has been recruiting from dozens of species, offering payment and protection in exchange for service. Marcus's voice carried a weight of personal knowledge. I lost friends to those bastards during the war. They have no loyalty except to whoever pays them. Vera felt her sister's emotional turmoil through their bond, fear for their safety mixing with something deeper and more complex. The growing connection between Naya and Marcus was no longer just about personal feelings. It was about trust, about the terrible vulnerability that came with caring for someone when the universe seemed determined to take away everything you valued. There's more, Marcus continued. The storm that's been protecting us, it's going to clear completely within 6 hours. After that, we'll be exposed to direct scanning. Then we run, Raven said immediately. Find another hiding place. Keep moving until what? Marcus interrupted, and Vera heard steel in his voice she hadn't heard before. Until you're captured anyway? Until exhaustion and desperation wear you down? No. He turned to face them fully, and in his eyes, Vera saw the exact moment when a man who had spent 12 years running from connection chose to embrace it instead. I have a better idea, he said quietly. We make our stand here? A silence that followed was pregnant with possibility and terror. Vera watched her sister's face, seeing the war between hope and fear playing out in her expression. Around them, the storm began to lessen its fury, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Explain, Naya said, her leadership voice. Steady despite the emotional chaos, Vera could feel through their bond. Marcus activated another display, this one showing the compound's defensive systems Vera hadn't even known existed. This facility wasn't just a research station. During the terraforming process, we dealt with hostile native species, pirates, claim jumpers. The defensive grid can repel anything short of a full military assault. And if they bring a full military assault? Seta asked. Marcus met Naya's eyes across the workshop, and Vera felt the moment of absolute truth pass between them. Then we face it together. The simple words carried the weight of a vow, and Vera felt her heart swell with recognition. This was how it had begun for her parents, for all the great bondings in Zephyrian history, not with grand gestures or formal ceremonies, but with two souls choosing to stand together against whatever the universe might bring. Sister, she said softly, placing her hand on Naya's shoulder. The dream walk brought you to him for a reason. Naya covered Vera's hand with her own, drawing strength from the contact. And what reason is that? Because some connections transcend species, transcend worlds. Vyra looked around the room at their chosen family Zephyrians and human united. By circumstances, but bonded by choice. Because the universe is vast and cold, and the only way to fight that coldness is with warmth, with love, with the courage to protect what matters, even when protecting it seems impossible. Marcus had been listening to their exchange with growing wonder. You're talking about bonding, he said, not making it a question. Permanent connection. I researched Zephyrian customs after you arrived. I know what it means. Do you? Naya challenged, stepping closer to him. Do you understand that if we bond, if we truly connect, there will be no barriers between us? No carefully guarded thoughts, no emotional distance to protect you from potential loss? I understand, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper, that 3 weeks ago I was dead inside, just going through the motions of existence, waiting for my body to catch up with my spirit. But watching you lead your sisters, seeing the way you care for them, feeling this impossible connection growing between us. He reached out tentatively, and when Naya took his hand, Vera saw the exact moment when both of their souls recognized home. I understand that some risks are worth taking, he continued, that some connections are worth fighting for. And if those mercenaries want to take you away from me, they're going to have to go through defenses they can't even imagine. The kiss that followed was gentle, reverent, and absolutely electric. Vera felt the emotional shockwave through her bond with Naya, not just love, but the kind of deep recognition that spoke of souls meant to find each other across any distance, any difference. Around them, the storm finally began to calm, as if nature itself approved of the union forming in the depths of the compound. But Vera knew that the greater storm was just beginning. The next day would bring enemies and choices that would test every bond they'd formed. But tonight, in the eye of approaching chaos, love had claimed its territory. And sometimes, Vera thought, as she watched her sister and Marcus hold each other with the desperate tenderness of those who had found something worth dying for, sometimes love was the strongest defense of all. The universe had brought them together through dreams and disaster. Now they would discover whether the bonds they'd forged could survive the ultimate test of fire and fury that was coming with the dawn.